Hi folks, welcome to another Tuning for Max Immersion. This is really just an update to the original Lotus 79 video that we did a couple of years ago. I've come back to the car after a couple of years away. Obviously iRacing have updated some settings, SimuCube have updated their software, and I've found what I feel is a much better set of settings for the car, especially on the steering force feedback, a little tweak on the pedals as well. So yeah, let's get stuck into settings for what is yeah, an awesome car. Right, so before we get into the detail, I first have to apologise for the shaky cam nature of the intro section of this video. My webcam, which is just behind where you guys are looking at the moment, broke some time ago, and I just haven't got around to replacing it basically. So that's why if you've seen any of our latest race videos, they've all been on the onboard camera behind me instead of having looking at my face because yeah, basically I don't have a camera to do that. So I'm filming this on my mobile phone at the moment. So yeah, apologies for that. But basically, yeah, the point of this video is just to revisit the Lotus 79, which is an incredible car. The car itself has been updated by iRacing since I raced it back in, I think it was 2022. The iRacing software has obviously been updated a little bit as well. There's some different settings and different layout really in the menu. As to where you play with things, and then the SimuCube used to be SimuCube True Drive, I think is now SimuCube Tuner. The fundamental settings and things you can change are the same. It's just laid out a bit differently, and my understanding of how force feedback works and what settings do, how different settings affect the car and affect the feeling, and what to tune is much better now than it was back in 2022 when I was first kind of exploring these things. I might do another small video at some point on there's a way to calculate what exact torque you're feeling at the steering wheel, what forces you're feeling at the steering wheel, going by what numbers you put into SimuCube, what numbers you put into iRacing, and you can calculate out what actual forces you're experiencing. So I'll do a separate video on that. I won't bog this one down with that. But for the most part, this is going to be mainly about some small tweaks to the Heusinkveld Ultimate Plus pedals, just a slight. It's not much of a difference, a slight difference. But the big changes are really to the force feedback in the steering wheel. I'm really happy with the car, how it feels. It's such a fun car to drive, especially now iRacing have updated it. I think I got the new tyre model as well, and since then you can play with the car a lot, and the power slides are so great fun, and it's just an awesome era of F1. The late 70s with these big ground effect cars, huge, big, sticky back tyres, and it's just a case of getting the car swung in and driving it on the slide, and it's brilliant. So, but also it should be physical. Again, one of the main things I had in mind when I put together the sim rig was that I didn't necessarily want. Well, obviously, yeah, I want to be as fast as possible, but the main thing for me was realism. So it was feeling like I'm driving a car that the car I'm driving, rather than just sitting in a room somewhere playing a game. And I feel like these settings for the Lotus 79, it really does give me that immersion. That by the end of a session or a race or whatever, I do feel like I've just just been throwing a beast of an F1 car around the circuit. So yeah, so without too much more blabbering on, I will spare you any more sight of my face in shaky cam mode, and we'll get stuck into the settings first of all, looking at the Heusinkveld Ultimate Plus pedals. Right, so focusing on the pedals first of all, some slight tweaks from last time. The actual physical layout is exactly the same. You can see from if I move my feet out of the way, we've got the three pedals there. So you've got your throttle on the right, the brake in the middle, which in this car we left foot brake, and then the clutch, obviously 1970s manual gearbox, and you need a clutch pedal to be realistic. So yeah, we've got the three pedals here, and yeah, the settings on True Drive, not True Drive, sorry, on the software on the left hand side here. So slight differences from last time. First of all, looking at the clutch, just the curve here is slightly different from last time, and that's just really through the different ways iRacing have changed how the clutch engages and changed how they modelled it. And I mean, this isn't perfect. My starts are never absolutely amazing, but this gives me a good feel. I can kind of feel the pedal's got a slight yoke on it. So you come about there, it feels like the clutching pedal engages. So you've got full down, and then about there it feels like the clutch is kind of engaging. So I'm mapping that to around about 70% of the output, and then you kind of hold it in that range. That's why it's kind of flatter here, so you can hold it in the range to get good clutch control off the line, and then you obviously release and once it's fully engaged. So yeah, that's the reason for the curve there. Again, it's very much personal preference, and I'm by no means saying that this is an ideal setting for the clutch. It's just what tends to work okay for me. I never get amazing starts, but my starts are generally not too bad. The throttle is straightforward enough. It's a throttle pedal. But what I've done is put a slight S shape into it. Not as much as the preset S curve type that you get in the software, but just to model, because a carburetor engine throttle curve tends to be an S shape. I think possibly iRacing models some of that in the software already in the sim, but just in case they didn't, it just makes me feel better to have a slight-ish bend in my my throttle trace. And also I find that just having a little softness at the bottom just allows you to play, especially when you're the car's sliding, you're just trying to gradually get on the throttle without spinning the rears up. It just softens it ever so slightly, just to help the power delivery when the car's right on the edge. So that's why I have that modelled like this. And the brake is pretty much how it was last time. I think previously we had 75 kilograms as the maximum load. I've taken it up to 80, which sitting still 80 is quite a lot of effort to push into it. But when you're in the car, I find that for me that works. It feels like I'm having to work the brake pedal as you should in a 70s F1 car. But it doesn't feel stupidly high. It's not 100 kilogram like I have for the, or is it 90? I've got 100. I can't remember for the modern F1 car. So it feels about right. Again, I've never driven this car in real life, so I don't know what the brake pedal load would be. But to me, this feels hard enough that it feels real, and that's what it's all about for me. In my head, it has to feel real. The dead zone at the bottom here. The reason for that is, again, I don't know if you can see on the pedal. There's about there. It just feels like I'm hitting resistance. There's a little bit of slack between there and there, which again I've dialed into the pedal just because it's not a brake-by-wire system. It's a mechanical braking system. So there's always a little bit of slack in the mechanical braking system as you kind of take up the slack in the pedal and in the pads a little bit, and the system itself, before you get some engagement. So that's why I've got that little dead zone there. And yeah, to me this looks good. So feel free to, if you have similar pedals to mine, feel free to try this out. And that's where the pedals are at. So let's move on to the real detail now and look at the force feedback settings. Right, here we go then, force feedback. So again, as you guys know in sim racing, this is where all your feeling comes from. You have your visual cues as you're driving, and you can kind of visually see how the car's behaving and when it's sliding and things, but most of the feedback, like all the physical feedback I have no motion on the rig or anything, comes from the force feedback. So this is really what tricks your brain into thinking that you're driving an F1 car from the 1970s rather than sitting in a room turning a motor with your hand. So here we are across in SimuCube 2 Ultimate in the SimuCube Tuner settings, and we'll go through the things one box at a time, and I'll try and explain why I've got things set the way they are. So the basic settings, I've started, when I last filmed this a couple of years ago, there's two areas of thinking about strength. You either set this software to be whatever the maximum strength you want to feel out of the wheel is ever going to be. So I think previously I had it set to around about 40% or so, 50% or so, about 15 newton meters that would be. So it's 50% of 31, 32 newton meters being the maximum. And then you tune everything else around about that. I've since decided to be of the camp that this should be set at 100, because that just allows the wheelbase its full range of usage, and you then tune down to what you want the car to feel using the iRacing software. So again, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do this, but I've now decided that this is the camp I want to be in, so it makes more sense to me. I've also done a little bit of work on understanding how the force settings in iRacing map to this, and then the calculation involved. And I wrote a little bit of a simple Excel spreadsheet that basically allows you to work out what force you're actually feeling. But I'll do that in a separate video because it would take a little bit of time here. So anyway, so how I've set this up, and we'll look at the iRacing settings in a second, but how I've set this up in the software is 100% max strength, which again in this is, if we turn the high torque on, is 31.35 Newton meters. I'll put the safety stop on to stop this thing beeping at me. But yeah, so 31.35 Newton meters is the maximum torque. Wheel range 520. I can't remember honestly if I had that previously. I think I probably did, and that's just from where I feel like, I think basically if you turn the steering wheel in game or in the simulator and look at where the wheels stop moving, you could set this up to 1980 or something, but did I say 520 it was at, or whatever it was, 520, yeah, that's where basically if you go into the sim and you turn the steering wheel until you see the wheels in the sim stopping, I think that's effectively where the maximum lock is. So through the process of doing that, I arrived at 520. It works fine for me. A lot of people set their wheel at 900 regardless, 900 degrees for everything, which again, if that works for you, that works for you. So again, this is really just a personal preference thing, whatever works for you. I've got mine at 520 and that's matched in iRacing. Before we go any further, actually, let's jump across into iRacing. So here's the settings menu in the sim. Again, we've got our 520 degrees here for the steering wheel. Again, pedals and everything mapped as per previously, nothing complicated there. If we pop down to force feedback, here we've got, so these are the important settings here. You could turn on auto, so that iRacing automatically senses what force feedback your steering wheel has. If you turn it on and you see where it goes, if you turn it off again, it'll stay in the same place. So I tend to have it off, it's just a personal thing. I just like to force iRacing to know it's 31 Newton meters, and again, you can leave it in automatic. It's not going to do anything wrong probably, but I just like to have it off to make sure there's no gremlins creep in or nothing decides to automatically change and I lose that mapping. Intensity doesn't matter because we're not using the auto mode, but strength is the other important one. So now they've got two numbers here. In the old software, they had this either as a number or as a force, and or a torque, I should say, and you could click it to change. Now they've just went with they're giving you both, which is handy. Now this effectively, without going into too much detail, again I'll do that in a separate video. This is what iRacing will map. This is what force iRacing or torque iRacing will map at the maximum output of your steering wheel. From a sim point of view. So if the sim outputs 41.8 Newton meters of torque, then I will feel 31 Newton meters of torque, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Again, I'll go into it a bit more detail later on. But you want this, basically you tune this to what you want, so that if you go this way on the scale and increase that, effectively, well, the number goes down, so the steering wheel will get heavier. Because again, if I was getting 10 Newton meters out of the sim, I'd be feeling 31 Newton meters, which would make the car completely undrivable, to be fair. And if you go the other way, you could have you wouldn't go that far because you would have no force, but it'll get lighter effectively. So move to the left, it's lighter, move to the right, it's heavier. And I found that, now I've forgotten the number, 41.8 was where to me it felt like hard work, but not undrivable. As I said earlier, I want to feel like I'm actually driving this car. I want to feel like I'm throwing it around the track and I'm having to physically work for it. But if you turn it up too high, obviously, then you can't drive it because you physically can't turn the wheel. The guys that drove these cars in real life were strong, properly strong. Now, I'm not a weakling, but also I don't want to have to train at the gym 3-4 days a week just to drive a simulator. So it's tuned for my strength. If you're a stronger person that can deal with higher loads, you might want to turn this down a little bit. If again you maybe want it to be a bit lighter, then you can turn it up a little bit. Slide it left if you want it lighter, slide it right if you want it heavier, and find somewhere. Again, for me the important thing was that I had to feel like I was working it. So yeah, when we go to the telemetry, which we'll swap across to now, and look at the actual forces coming out. So this is at where are we? Spa, which is, Eau Rouge. This is Eau Rouge down here. If you look at the green at the bottom, this is steering wheel torque. Eau Rouge is probably the highest steering load pretty much you can get around the circuit. I don't know if there's some others in there, but the compression combined with the speed, combined with the steering angle that you put in and stuff, it's quite a high load. So the sim's outputting around about 30, 32 newton meters or so there. In general cornering, I think Puhon is here somewhere, and we're looking at maybe 20, just over 20, 22 newton meters or so. So when the calculation works out, that means that the maximum torque I'm feeling in cornering, as I say, somewhere through Eau Rouge, a really kind of high G compressed corner, I'm getting around about 20 to 21 newton meters out physically in my hands, which is heavy for me anyway. In general cornering, again, you like your 20 newton meters or so out of the sim, I'm getting around about 15 newton meters out, which again is heavy and it's hard work, but it's not undrivable. You do get, again, things here like going through the bus stop chicane, hitting curb strikes and things. You get spikes. We're up at what? That's almost 60 newtons or so out of the sim, which again in my hands is something like 30 or 40. Well, no, it wouldn't be as high as 30 because the wheelbase only goes up to 32, but it will be stretching the wheelbase to its limits. So I'm getting a real whack off a curb, which you would expect. Like, that's realistic. If you hit a curb, especially some of these sausage curbs, with a car that's this powerful, in this light, with no power steering, you're going to have a hard job hanging onto the steering wheel. So that's real. So yeah, so that's where the forces come from, and where we've mapped them to, and how it feels. So let's jump back across now, back into the software, and go through some of the other settings. So first up, we've got mechanical feel, damping, friction, and inertia. Again, these settings affect basically how as it says, how the wheel feels in your hand. Effectively, I try and keep these as low as possible. I don't put any centering force on because iRacing deals with that quite nicely, I find. Generally, if you go too low with these settings, you can get some oscillations in the wheel with damping. Friction, if it's too low, the wheel just feels too light. When you're not in a corner, like heading down a straight or something, or even just when you're trying to catch, if you're trying to quickly catch things, it's too light. The wheel just feels, feels like there's no steering system in there. You're not going through all the ball joints and things. It's not real. Again, inertia as well. That just helps to give you that. If you're, I can imagine if you sit in your road car and you turn the steering wheel lightly, obviously, without moving, you'll turn the wheel and it'll just bounce back a little bit. Turn it, it'll bounce back a bit. Just to the kind of the resistance of the tires and the road and things. And it's the same when you're driving. Like if you turn in, the wheel doesn't just stick there. It wants to kind of bounce around a little bit, and that inertia just gives you that kind of feeling through it. So these are the settings I use. Again, feel free to copy them if you want to. Generally, I try and keep these as low as possible because the more filters you put into the software, the more you're dialing down what the sim's trying to tell you at the end of the day. So you want these to be enough to make it feel real, but not so much that you're over damping or have too much friction or too much inertia and you're losing the feel of the car. Smoothness now, reconstruction filter. This is basically looking at where the software from SimuCube takes the signal from iRacing and it tries and smooths out some of the bumps and things that you get through the signal. Now, the higher this is, the smoother the signal will be, but you tend to lose, again, some detail. And again, the lower it is, if I turn it off or really low, like the wheel feels grainy, it's quite jumpy in your hand. Even just turning the wheel from side to side, you can feel it going as you turn, and it's not real at all. It feels mechanical. But you don't want, again, this to be too high because, well, first of all, you lose some of the feel and some of the detail. But also it adds latency effectively. So you want this to be as low as possible to save any latency between the signal coming out of the sim getting to your hands. So again, 3 is about as low as I can turn it without getting that graininess. Especially sitting in the pits or something when you're low speed, if you turn the wheel you feel dump 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 dump, which is, I'm exaggerating it, but yeah, it's not a nice feeling. But 3 tends to dial it out for me. Slew rate limit. Now this is something that makes a big difference for me in the Lotus 79, possibly other cars as well, but I find when this is off, when it's completely up this end and turn off, the steering wheel is far too aggressive over bumps and over even just the road surface. Like it almost hurts my hands after a while. Like the sheer aggressiveness of this jag 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 jag. It's like a signal's like a sawtooth signal just jagging you constantly, and it's far too harsh for a real car. Like in my experience of single seaters and road cars have got power steering, but it's just too much. Even like a go-kart where there's nothing in there apart from the steering, arm, and then the steering rod's out. There's no suspension or anything. It's not that aggressive. So I really found that with the Lotus 79, it was just jumping constantly. Too much vibration through the engine. It was horrible. So I've had to screw this right down to 0.7. Now what this is doing, the slew rate is effectively, well, it tells what it is, newton meters per millisecond. So the more you screw this down, the more it chops off those signals that are really going from like no force to high force to no force to high force to no force to, this massive jump in forces. It irons a lot of this out. If you take it all the way down to zero, like the car feels like it's on balloon tires, like you don't feel anything. So you can't take it to 0 or 0.1 really without losing a lot of detail. So you still want that. You still want those impacts from curves. If you screw it too low, then yeah, you hit a curb and you won't feel it because the curb strike will be muted out by this slew rate limit. It'll be above the limit that you've set. So again, it's a matter of fine-tuning it. How the more you have, or the closer to off you are, closer to the right-hand side, the more little prickles and bumps and things you'll feel. But for me, again, it was just too unrealistic a way up there. So this still gives me curb strikes. The thing still ratchets out my hand if I hit something the wrong way. I can feel the rumble at Spa. There's a couple of rumble strips that it really feels brilliant on. You just get a through the steering wheel as you would in real life. So I'm still getting all that detail, but it just takes out all of the really aggressive stuff that it completely spoiled the immersion for me when I drove it. So I like that setting 0.7. That works for me in this car. Again, bandwidth. This is similar. It's I don't know too much about it, so I'm not going to talk too much because I'd be guessing. I'll probably say something wrong, which somebody can correct me on. But effectively, it's to do with the same thing. It's to do with the signal processing and taking out too much. Too much information too aggressively fed to you. So again, 330, I've played with it up and down a little bit. Didn't notice a huge difference, but what I did notice further up is that sometimes if it's right up this end, you got that kind of, on the straight, you would start getting these oscillations sometimes, which are, again, if you take your hands off the wheel, it would just start building up an oscillation. So this helps to tune out that. Which is one of the main things, because again, taking your hands off the steering wheel in real life, this car wouldn't just start oscillating madly and going off the track. So that's just a signal processing thing. So that helped a little bit with that as well. As did, I should say, the friction and inertia. Having these too low will give you that out of control straight line feeling as well. So yeah, did away with that. So there we go. That's the smoothness settings. Not too much else in here. Oh no, sorry. That is something major, which is the static force reduction. So static force reduction is effectively, if you don't know, static force is effectively a cornering force. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You think you're not static when you're going through a corner. But static force meaning when you turn the steering wheel and you've got a load wanting to push the steering wheel back again, that you've got to resist by turning the steering wheel more. That constant load is effectively a static load. It's a static load as in it's statically, constantly trying to push the steering wheel straight again in your steering. So this percentage reduction allows you to reduce those loads but keep all the spike loads like your curb strikes and your kind of snap oversteers and things, those the sudden forces high to this full scale, whereas this will scale down the maximum strength for static forces. So I quite like that. I quite like the effect of keeping the curb strikes and things quite high, relatively speaking, and taking down the cornering force. Again, too much of this and it becomes, you don't feel anything in the corner, and then you hit a curb and the thing ratchets out your hand. You think, well, that's not right. And again, too low, it's almost like the curb strikes are not as powerful. In order to get such hard curb strikes, you've got to have a steering wheel that's far too heavy to handle. So 9% reduction works well for me. Again, feel free to play around with yourself. The rest of the things here, ultra low latency mode 8, I'm not entirely sure what this is. A little bit, again, this was a little bit about those oscillations in a straight line as well. If I was too low on this, I would get those up too high and it would start a little bit of latency. Maybe it just didn't feel right. But 8 tended to dial out any of those oscillations and work well. Torque linearity, I've left it at 1. Not really played with that number, so I'm not going to comment on that one too much, but it feels fine to me at 1. Bump stop feel, medium. Again, there's 3 settings. There's hard, medium, and soft. For me, medium, it feels like a real car bump stop. Hard feels like you're kind of when you hit the bump stop, you hit a brick wall. I'll turn the torque on in a second. So there's a bump stop there, and you're gonna it's difficult. You're not seeing anything, of course, but I'm getting like a soft stop, like I'm hitting a bushing or something, which is fine. If I screw it up to hard, yeah, it's solid. It feels like I'm hitting a really solid bushing, which is fine, but it's a bit unrealistic. Not that I'm ever on the bump stop. It really just doesn't matter because you're never this far around the steering lock anyway. In soft, soft feels that's like a road car. That's like a saloon car or something on the road. You've got a little soft little edge. So yeah, medium felt fine to me. So I've kept it there. And again, bump stop range is I've set that the same as the steering range. You could probably set that smaller if you wanted to, maybe, and so you could engage the bus. I'm not sure why you'd want to, but somebody will maybe tell me why. But anyway, I've set them the same. That's it. I haven't touched the notch filter. I haven't touched the ultimate filters, and I have turned off the only 2, I believe, filters that activate in iRacing and damping and friction. I've turned that off because I don't want to interfere even more with the signal coming out of the sim. I'd rather do it through the smoothness filters further up and the mechanical field filters. So those are the SimuCube 2 settings. We've looked at the iRacing settings they correspond to, and that is really it. So next, what I might do is suit up, stick on the helmet cam, and take you for some laps, and enjoy the car a little bit. So let's get stuck into it, shall we? Hi folks, welcome to the cockpit of the Lotus 79 here at a kind of foggy, but it should be quite nice, Fuji Speedway in Japan, which just happens to be the circuit that the series is racing at this week, so hence why I'm here. So as far as the cockpit layout goes, before we get stuck into the driving side of things, let's look at the cockpit. So again, same as it was last year, we've got the ignition, what should be the starter button here, but unfortunately this is broken currently for some reason, so I need to get into that, and I think it's probably just a wiring connection issue, so I need to redo that. But that should be the starter button. This is the starter button at the moment, but this for this car, these buttons are just to control the black box. So the little iRacing black box at the side there, I can filter through it here, move up and down with the controls here, which is handy for when you're racing. The knob at the bottom here is brake bias. So that is, as it was in my Formula Ford, maybe not true to real life, as it was in the Formula Ford, turn left to go forward and right to go rearwards. I always remember that because rear is right, they both start with R, so that's why I map it that way. On this side of the cockpit, we've got obviously the turn off for the SimuCube, quick release, what do you call it? Safety off for the SimuCube. In this car, we've got the front and rear anti-roll bar adjustment. So again, turn to the right to increase or left to decrease the stiffness. I think in the real car there was a lever down here at your side that you changed, but I don't have that, so this is as close as it's getting. And then we've got the good old H-pattern gearbox, and as I spoke about in the last video, you've got the dog leg layout here. So first is towards you and back, and then second is straight, third, fourth, and fifth. Neutral, I think reverses, in and forward. So there we go. Right, let's do some laps, shall we, and take this baby for a spin. Gotta love that engine. Love that engine note. Right, let's go. So clutch in first. Watch the speed out the pit lane. And here we go. Far too deep into turn 1 and cold tires, but there we go. Right, so take it easy because the new model in this car. Oh, listen to that engine. Oh, the tires when they're cold are very slippery. See the curb strike there. The force of the steering wheel is ridiculous. And here you really feel. More so when the tires are hot, but you really feel the load. I'm having to struggle here with the car. into the apex of the hairpin. Feel the rumble through the curve there as well, through the steering wheel. In here, yeah, I got a nice grrr over the curve there, so I'm getting all the little details, and it's a hard work to drive. Here again, if I hit the curve hard, oh, that's hard work. A little slow final section here, again, nice little ripple through there. So I'm getting all the detail I need through the steering wheel, and the force as well. It's hard work, makes you sweat, as it should. Right, let's try and build up to a faster lap, shall we? We've got a little bit of heated tyres, they're still a bit cold, but... Oh! What a feeling coming up through this gearbox. This massive straight, and this absolute beast of an F1 car. Still too cold. Missed the apex again by a country mile. I'm not that good at multitasking, so talking and trying to drive fast at the same time is not my strong point. But let's get some heat in these tyres and start attacking a bit more. So much fun. So much fun driving this car. See if I can get turn 1 right this time. Better. Now we're getting some heat in the tyres. Oof. Get a black box up and see what kind of lap times we're doing. At 26.0. Sure we can get to the 25s. Bit deep again. Bouncing off the level limiter through there. We need a higher third, I think. Clean the visor. I neated up the last bit of it, but oh, it's so fun, this car. That was a slow lap, 26.2. Feeling the arms already. Right, let's see where that was. Fell a bit better. 25.8, that'll do. Great stuff. Right, thanks folks. Hope you enjoyed this. Oh, that was better. Hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, see you in the next one. I might just be here for some time. Awesome.